Everybody. I am so excited to see you again. I am loving this series and loving all of these amazing women I get to talk to, and I hope that you're enjoying this as well. So, in case you're just catching us in the middle of this, this is part of my 31-day series of encouraging conversations. So, it's a big mix of video chats with friends and blog posts and devotionals and just some encouragement on my blog. So I do have a main page that you can head to if you want to get caught up on all of these, or if you want to get caught up on the videos, they're all going to be on YouTube, so you can catch them there. But I am so excited today that we get to chat with my friend Lara Williams about something I'm really excited about. And we're going to talk about living in the gifts that God has given us. And I think that as women, we have so many pressures from the outside in to do all these things, right? To say yes to all these things, be part of all of these things. And as bloggers and, women who are online all the time and on social media, it's even crazier. And every opportunity seems like it should be our opportunity. And it's just not, that's not what we're created for. God has given us specific gifts and definite resources and things and plans that are special for us, unique to us. He's the God who created the universe. And there is no doubt in my mind that his plan for each of us is unique and special to the gifts he's given us. So I'm just really excited because I know that during the course of my day, I feel like I am at all different stages of this process of discovering my gifts, or being in the thick of living in my gifts, or needing encouragement to not look at somebody else's gifts and keep going. So we're going to kind of touch on all of those things and just encourage you today. So I'm really excited. So I am going to go ahead and have Lara introduce herself and where she blogs and where she's from and about her family, all that good stuff. So it's all you, girl.
Great. Hey, I'm excited to be here. Very excited, Crystal, for this series and just to get to be a part of it. I'm Lara Williams. I am over at, you can catch me at larawilliams.org and just see kind of my blog through that space and just where I hang out in social media and things like that. I live in North Carolina, the central part of North Carolina, with my husband, Adam, who's a firefighter, and my 3 kids, Haley, Bryson, and Ryan. Their ages 10, 8, and 6.5. So that's kind of us. I do homeschool for the 2nd year, and that's hard, but that's where I'm at, and it's been a good, challenging wildness. And then I am an author and speaker, and yeah, so that's a little bit about me.
Well, I love it, and I'm in love with the pictures that you have behind you there. I think that's so fun. Guessing those are done by your kiddos.
Yes, there's a long line, so yes.
Oh, that's so smart. I'll have to do that for Maddie because she's big into the arts and crafts and painting. And I mean, her favorite thing right now, I got her in the dollar section of Target. It was their bathtub finger paints by Crayola, which fortunately do a better job washing off of the tub than off of her. Like, you can't actually use your fingers to paint because you turn into a very blue, like, it's crazy. So I was like, here's a paintbrush, go for it. And like, I go in and she's like painting rainbows on the bathtub and like having a good old time. I'm like, yes, this is so fun. So that's such a fun stage. Now we're getting to actually want to keep her art, right? Because I mean, there's days where there's nothing much to keep. So now I'm enjoying it more.
Yeah, I know. I got these little hangy things from IKEA, and I had my husband put them up, and then I just string up pictures, and I bought those mats and just put their picture behind the white matting. And
it's so smart. I love it. I love that. And then see, what I would do is I would like take a picture of it, and then that way when I replaced it at the end of the year, I would have like a whole book of pictures of all their art, but I wouldn't have to actually keep the art, right?
That's a great idea, though. Yeah. There's so much of it. I'm going to file this in the trash can.
Yes, let me put it in the circular file, I believe is what that's called.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, so that's, totally what we were planning to talk about.
Exactly.
It's good. And
You're gifted.
I'm talking to somebody about IKEA today, so clearly I have a trip in my future soon. Love me from IKEA. But all right, so talking about living in the gifts that God has given us, I know this is something that you're passionate about. So what is it about this that really just, sets you on fire to talk about it? And how have you seen God, putting this on your heart recently?
Well, it just seems like in recent, probably months, I would say, the Lord's just given me a passion to inspire, well, I guess encourage myself, but also inspire and encourage other women to live in the gifts that God's given us. Um, I think mainly because there's so much comparison that takes place, and comparison totally steals what Christ intends for us in the abundant life. And I guess it's because we start looking, whether it's in the blogging world or as authors or speakers or in any really any ministry that God calls us to, it's so easy to start looking around us and comparing ourselves to what others are doing or how they're doing it. And God has a unique vision and a unique calling for each of us, and we don't get to partake in it if we're constantly looking around us at what everyone else is doing instead of looking at Him, worshiping Him, delighting in Him, and then He stirs and turns our heart's desires towards the things He has specifically planned for us. And it's really only when we're walking in that we'll fully experience that abundance He intends for us as His children. So yeah, that's just kind of where He's got the beat of my heart recently. So yeah.
Well, I love that a lot, actually. And it's funny, just yesterday I was working out. I do yoga, not
Mhm.
well, but I do it. And one of the reasons I love it is because to me, yoga is not about perfection. It's about showing up and doing it. And
Mm.
even though it's not perfect, right? And so
Mhm.
by the time that this actually goes on my blog, it'll probably have been about a month since this post I'm going to talk about has gone live. But he put on my heart in the middle of a class, right? So I'm like trying to like not fall over and look like a because I'm around other people and not just like doing it. Normally I just like do workouts at home, but I was actually at a class, so there's like people on either side of me. And
Uh-huh.
I'm in the middle of the class, like sweating disgusting, like not cute. I'm not cute when
I'm never cute when I
I'm
work
like
out.
trying just to remember to breathe and not pass out. And
Yeah.
I'm going through this, trying to balance and going from move to move, and God keeps telling me, like, this is what I'm talking about, that you can't look around. You can't look around. Like, this is for you. You
Mm.
have to focus. And it was this amazing, just tangible thing for me where, in yoga and in my walk with Christ, I have to stay focused and on something steady. For me, that is Jesus, whether I'm doing yoga or not. Like, in yoga,
Mhm.
I focus on Jesus. In my daily life, when I focus on Jesus, and center on Him as the immovable rock of my life, right? He is
Yeah.
steadfast, He's firm. I am balanced. I am not going to fall over. I am
Exactly.
on the right course. I'm doing my best where He has me, right? But the
Mhm.
second I start to peek out of the corner of my eye what she's doing or how she's doing it or how much further she is from me, is she more advanced
Mhm.
than me? Am I doing better than her, right? Am I lifting myself up and having a moment of pride about where I am in my practice, then
Right.
that's whenever, my mind just shifts off balance and I stumble and I fall. And it's the same thing whenever I'm figuring out, what I'm doing with this call
Mhm.
God's put in my life. Whenever I start looking to the side at what she's doing, because
It's
there's
so
nothing
true.
there's nothing new under the sun, right? You can't
Mhm.
write a blog post that somebody else hasn't, maybe thought a little bit about or written about. Like it just
Mhm.
doesn't happen. There's not a ministry out there that hasn't ever occurred before. But whenever I start taking my focus off of what's solid and steady and what God has for me in that moment and what I'm capable of doing, where He has me, I'm done. I lose it. I'm distracted. I fall. I
Mhm.
compare. I lift myself up. Like it's this
I get.
whole thing. And I was like, oh, can I just maybe just finish this yoga thing and then we can deal with this? I can't write a blog post in my head right now.
Yeah.
So I'm like, this is a little distracting. I'm not gonna lie, God. I get the word. I receive it.
Mhm.
I receive it. I will write
There
it.
you go. There
It
you
was just
go.
funny timing, but I am there with you. I mean,
Mm.
we have such unique callings, and it should be a joy to walk alongside our sisters and practice it together, right? And be there to maybe reach out a hand to steady somebody,
So
but
true.
not necessarily be trying to get over into what they're doing, because God
Right.
has something for us. So I know you're involved in a bunch of stuff, and as an author and a speaker, and I know you write and do all kinds of different stuff. What do you use to keep yourself centered on what God has called you to, and how did you figure out some of those strengths that God has given you?
Mm. Wow, those are big questions. Well, I guess first of all, how I stay focused, practically speaking, just in the everyday, and it sounds so churchy. I think sometimes some of the things we say as Christians to encourage each other, it sounds churchy, but it's just true that staying in God's Word is so key, but not just in His Word, but having that intimate communion with Him where I'm seeking Him not only in the morning, but just throughout my day. And I'm, just like you did in yoga, you're conversing with Him and you're communicating with Him. When I'm feeling frustrated or jealous or confused, whatever the feelings, just being in that place of constant communion with Him is just such a churchy answer, but it's really so key. And then I guess practically also just staying in community with others. I have probably a handful of what I would say really close friends that encourage me in the gifts God has given me, and I can go to them when I'm not sure if I should say yes to something, or feeling a draw to do one thing, and they can encourage me in that, or say, that's really not going in line with what you said is kind of where God is leading you, or things like that. So staying in community and staying in communion with the Lord. And then practically, I actually just remembered a book that was really, really helpful in organizing my time according to my calling. I don't know if you've read Amy Lynn Andrews' book, Tell Your Time. Have you read that, Crystal? It's really good.
I haven't read it yet, but it sounds like something I would absolutely love.
Yeah. So in that book, Amy, first of all, is hilarious, and she's so fun. But in that book, she basically has you walk through, what are the gifts that God has given me? What are the roles He's called me to play? And it was just really helpful in organizing my day and organizing my time according to the gifts that God has given me. So I, can more easily say no to something that, that just doesn't fit in line with how I need to be spending my time and how God is calling me to spend my time with regard to my gifts. So that was really helpful as well. You asked the question though, how did I know? Like, how do I know what are His gifts or His calling upon my life? And it sounds kind of like a philosophical answer, but it really has grown out of that intimacy with Him and seeing where I'm energized. I've really come to think, not that callings should be easy. They're not easy. Not that walking in our gifts are easy, but I do believe that walking in our gifts energize us. So for me, spending time writing or spending time preparing, but specifically giving a message that God's laid in my heart and speaking that message is so energizing to me. And so it kind of confirms a call or a gifting. Also, when people encourage you, when the body encourages you in that gift, maybe you've written something or served somewhere or done something, for the body, and they come back and kind of reaffirm that, I believe God uses that to confirm the gifts that He's given us, to show us where He's strengthened us, because again, it's all what He's gifted us with, and the power of His Spirit, He's gifted us so that we can minister to His body. And so when we walk in those things, the body then responds, I believe, with encouragement so that we'll keep going when it's hard. But so that's just, I guess, a few answers to those two questions. But
I could not agree more with the what energizes you, right? So, and I think that it's, you can read all the books in the world about gifts and personality types and Strengths Finder, like all of these things are great, but at the end of the day, what those do for me is honestly teach me how to probably engage more with other people based on what their types are, like how to communicate and things like that. But it doesn't necessarily tell me what I'm passionate about.
Right.
God has given me specific things that I'm passionate about.
Yes.
And as an introvert especially, I really, really key in on those things
Mm.
whenever they give me energy and don't drain me,
Yeah.
because there's a lot I mean, I'm hypersensitive and I'm an introvert, and so like the world just like very quickly like closes in on my head and I'm like, get away. I just want to be by myself and do nothing and hide under the covers and eat chocolate. Um,
Right.
not really. That sounded just sort of not me, but chocolate for sure. But for me, it's those times, like these conversations to me, the one-on-one, talking about how to glorify God. For me, I get excited when I get to talk about community, when I get to talk about how to glorify God on social
Mm.
media, and it's so interesting to me to then be able to look back and see how God has lined things up for me to be able to work out these strengths that He's given
Mm.
me. Because whenever
Yeah.
you're a kid and you're dreaming about what that job would be that you would have when you grow up, right? Like
Mhm.
what your passion is whenever you're little. And, I think I had everything from like astronaut to, veterinarian, like all the typical kid stuff. But somewhere in my head, I got it that I was going to be an editor for a newspaper in New York City. And then I was like, it'll be great. I'll live in Manhattan. I'll have cute shoes. It'll be amazing. Well, and part of that was because the job that I currently have didn't even exist when I was a kid. I'm older than the internet. And so I could never have dreamed of the job that I have.
Right.
God had put on my heart from a very young age these things that I'm so passionate about, writing and the word and communicating, right? Like He's called me to be a communicator, and as an introvert, that's really scary. The preparing to give a talk is much more terrifying, actually, to me than actually giving it. Afterwards, I'm like, yes. But the day before, I'm like, tell me never to do this again. But it's so interesting to me how God has just over the years, over the course of my life, poured into those strengths and developed those strengths and those gifts that He's given me to where He wants me right now, for such a time as this, right? Like it's all
Absolutely.
come together. And it's so fascinating to me just to be able to see how, yes, I have had different, preferences for books and music and movies and fashion and food and all these different things come and go, right? Like but there are certain things about me and what I love that have
Hmm.
stayed the same. And to
Yeah.
me, whenever I can key in on what those are, what hasn't changed in the last 10 years for me? What do I still love? What does get me excited to talk, even whenever I feel like I've used all my words for the whole day?
Exactly.
What are those things? And I think that's where you can start to figure out, all right, this is where God's calling me. And then you can look, especially as bloggers, and say, okay, God, how do you want me to use those online for you? Because it
Hmm.
ultimately comes down to serving His kingdom with the strengths
Exactly.
He's giving us, right? It's not about us. It's not about shining a light on us. I think it's Christine Kane that says, the light that shines on us should never be brighter than the light that shines on Christ. Or I butchered that quote. I'm so sorry. But
That's good.
it's true. Like we shouldn't be in the spotlight. I didn't give myself these gifts, and that's not my goal for them. So, um, I just love that so much, and I love being in community as a way
Hmm.
to stay encouraged, because it can get really challenging, and you do get a lot of opportunities that come your way that you've got to have those core women in your life who know you, who
Yeah.
know your strengths, who know the call on your life, and
Hmm.
you can kind of use them as your God lens filter, right? Where you can say, listen, I think I would really like to do this because it sounds amazing, and they can look at it and they're like, well, yes, it's good, but it's not yours, and
Yeah.
you should probably pass, and it's that energy thing again for me, because, whenever I get an opportunity, I don't know if you're like this, but if I get an opportunity and it immediately makes me feel dread, like,
Mm.
oh, well, okay, yeah, I guess I could do that. Like, that's not really probably something that's using my gifts to their fullest advantage.
Mm.
And when we say yes to those things, we're
Hmm.
potentially missing out on something better and more suited to our gifts that God has for us. And we might be taking that away from somebody else who God intended it for,
Oh,
who
that's so
wouldn't
true.
get the opportunity if we just always say yes. So,
Absolutely.
so
Absolutely.
I just, has there been any of those opportunities lately that you've just really been like, oh, I would love to do it, but I feel like this one might not be a right fit? Or have you gotten pretty good at being able to identify what those are?
I've definitely gotten better over the years, and yeah, that did happen recently, only because we've actually earned the transition. The Lord's calling us to a different church body, which is a huge prayerful decision. But as we have started transitioning, I have been very prayerful because there are opportunities to serve, and I want to build community and serve, but at the same time, I want to stay within the gifts that He's given me. So there was an opportunity, and I did say no to it for those reasons, you know. And I think, again, knowing kind of our gifts and knowing where the direction He's calling us, you know, empowers us to say no at some points, graciously and prayerfully as well. But it definitely helps steer our yeses and our nos for sure.
And I think that that is, again, something that's a really good indicator. You know, if you're sure and you're solid about what your gifts are and the call God's put on your life, you know, maybe it's the God-sized dream He has for you for this season, or just where He has you right now. Those yeses and nos are easier, and then the nos don't have any guilt attached to them. And I think that it's
Right.
to get really caught up in feeling guilty about saying no, so we say yes to everything. But
Mm-hmm.
when we start to think of it as, this is, you know, I think that there are women who could do everything that's presented to them and do it excellently. I think that I'm not always that person. I think I can do lots of things, but none of them would be excellent. I would there's a cost. Every time we say yes, there's a cost for something else.
Mm-hmm.
So, just being aware of, what that impact is to your call, to your ministry, to where you're serving, to your community, to your family. And I think that right now it's really easy to think that every time we get an opportunity to do something, we have to answer immediately, right? Because social
Mm-hmm.
media is always on. The internet is always on. Blogs are
Oh, yeah.
constantly being posted. People are constantly being able to connect with one another in text messages or Voxer or whatever it is. And it can feel like everything's urgent, and it's not.
Yeah.
It is okay to take time and say, listen, I'm really grateful that you asked me. I want to take some time to pray about it and see if it's a right fit.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't imagine anyone being upset with that response. You
Exactly.
know, and just to be honest and say, listen, I really think there's somebody else that's better for this than me. And, this is not a fit for where God's calling me right now. You can respond with a no that's very gracious and encouraging for the
Mm-hmm.
project that you have, that doesn't leave you feeling guilty about anything. It makes you feel free when you know that you're walking in God's call and you're not grasping for everything that doesn't belong to you. That's where you start to get chained down and like in the pit. Like
Yeah.
you can't do it.
Mm-hmm.
So there is definitely freedom in knowing your strengths and your gifts from God and everything. So then when we get to walk in it, it's just like a big party all the time because we're all energized and excited.
Yes, it can be. Yeah.
Yeah. It,
Mm.
it can be it can definitely be hard though. I think, there are moments where it feels really good and then there are moments where you feel a little bit like you're the only one that sees the vision
Yeah.
and you're the only one that's walking it. And so when those moments come, because I think that it's important for us to encourage women who are there too, who are just really either just unsure, maybe they've lost
Mm.
that a little bit of that energy for their strengths. Where do you turn to when you just need an extra dose of encouragement? Are there verses or other
Mm.
resources that you go to?
Well, I like to preach to myself for sure. And again, I know it sounds so churchy, but it's just vital to remind myself of what's true, to remind myself of what God says about me and over me and what He's promised to me as His daughter. And so definitely just hiding away with the Lord is just so powerful. Just getting in that quiet place where we're seeking Him and on Monday and on Tuesday and when it's hard and when family's hard or when situations are difficult, just getting away with Him and reminding myself that He has put the Spirit of God, His Spirit within me, and to seek Him. Because I was thinking a minute ago just how there is a mark of peace when we're aligned with His will, and I just lost the verse, but is it in, I think it's First Thessalonians 5 maybe, where he says, rejoice always, pray without ceasing, give thanks in everything, for this is the will of God for you. And so often we're like, what is the will of God for me? What is the will of God for me? And really, it's seeking first his kingdom, and then these things will be added to you. So as we're rejoicing, sometimes seasons are hard, and he's not calling us to foolishly rejoice in hard things. He's calling us to rejoice in him, in his promises, to pray without ceasing, to bring every thought captive to what he says, and then to give thanks in everything, trusting that he will be faithful. And so as we do those things, just as Jesus said, seeking first what he says and bringing our thoughts and bringing our hearts back to what God says, he really does add these other things, and he really does stir us and steer us in the direction he's leading us to go, and in the direction that will be most fulfilling for us as his children. So I'm not sure that I answered your question, but I guess it's just that place of being filled, and as Paul says to Timothy, fan into flame the gift of God in you. And the way we fan into flame his gift, the Spirit of the Lord, is by bringing our hearts back to what's true. So I just preached to you, and that was I preached to myself right then. But
I love you could preach to me all day, especially if you did, some slam poetry or something.
Oh yeah.
you can't let that one go. I keep preaching.
I know. I've got one I'm trying to release, but I'm waiting on an okay from some music, and so we'll see how that unfolds.
Oh, yeah. Exciting! Okay, now I'm really excited because
we'll see in God's timing.
God has given you the gift of some words, girl. So I'm pumped about that. But that answered my question just beautifully, because I think that in those times where we really struggle with not striving, right? So we want to walk in our gifts, and we want to trust God for the call in our lives. But when we start to strive and put our own agenda on top of it, that's where we can really start to just struggle, right? And
absolutely.
So when we know the order of things, right? Rejoice in him, pray constantly, right? So it's taking away, our agenda would say, do these 5 things to be successful, do these 12 things to grow your platform, do these, in this order, and check these things off. And this is exactly what you need to do to succeed. And God says, come to me.
Yeah. Unless he builds it, we labor in vain.
Yeah.
I don't want to labor in vain. There's not enough time in the day for me to spend it laboring in vain. You know what I mean? Like, I just don't want to waste my time.
So if we want to be efficient in our, God-sized dream and strength chasing here, it's turning to him and trusting that, I think that the hard part for me is I want to identify a gift he's given me, and I want to go use it immediately. But that's not how God works. It's strength to strength, right? It's, preparing us constantly for the next thing, for the next door he's going to open. And so understanding what he's given us is important, but it's also important to know that we are prepared for that next thing to happen. And so it's taking time to be with him, to let him do the work, to refine us, to do the hard, the heart work that has to happen, because there are certain things he's going to call us to do that we just will not be ready to do right away. Like, we just will not. And he knows it, and he's giving us enough glimpses to keep us going. I think sometimes he does it for me where he's like, and here's a nudge, but hold up, come back 2 steps, and work on this first, and then I'll open that door for you. Yes. And he does it to me all the time because he knows me. He knows I would just barrel through that thing and be like, I'm here. What can you do for me? How can I serve? How can I be amazing? And he's like, oh, except I want you to walk through the door and serve me and do it for me. And so he holds me back sometimes. He wants me to be with him more than he wants me to be successful, honestly.
Absolutely.
And, according to my own agenda anyway, he wants his kingdom to be glorified. He wants, his daughters to come and be with him. And it's the relationship part of the gospel, it's having that time with him and getting to know his heart, having our hearts formed more into the likeness of his. And so when we put those things back in order, when we get the priorities back, I think that's where we can really be encouraged, and where God start to just work on, here's what's really next, and it's going to look different. The timing is never what I want. I don't know about you, but I'm always like, so if you could just open that door on Tuesday, I would be totally ready to go. We'll be set. And he's like, you're funny. You're funny. So,
This time is not our time. It's just not. And learning to be at peace with that is just such a precious place, you know, to just rest. And him opening the doors, him leading the way, it really is a place of rest for our soul. But,
yeah, that's a good word. I love it. Alrighty. Well, I think we are about out of time. I think that you and I could probably preach to one another for the next hour on this.
yeah, and all three of my kids are staring at me. They just all walked in.
They
So,
should totally peek around and say
yeah.
hi. They should come over and say hi. I would love it.
Here's my oldest. Here's my middle. And my third he just went out, so I don't know where he went.
He's like, I'm not having any of this. Well, I'm so glad that we got to spend some time together today.
I know, it's great.
So
good to talk.
This
Always good to
energizes
talk.
me. So thank you for doing this.
Thank you, Krista. I appreciate the invitation.
Well, it was so good. And so, friends, we would love to chat with you in the comments of this blog post today.
Yeah.
So if you're viewing this on YouTube, you can click over onto the blog post, or if you're in the email, you're honestly not watching this, you've already clicked over because video and email, you know, it's a thing. So come over and hang out with us. Let us know what we are most excited about with this. Where are you in figuring out God's call and His gifts on your life, and where can we pray for you and encourage you today? Because we want to do that. And so if you have questions for either of us, or you have a scripture that encourages you, we want that too, so we can build up our own little list of things we can go to when we need them. We're going to call it a day here, but we will see you guys again very soon. So, bye.
Bye.